Warm greetings to everyone. Welcome to the 20th lecture of Phase A in this self-knowledge course. Today's topic is titled The Psychological Country. In this session, we'll explore a fascinating aspect of our inner world, what we call the psychological country. We will discover that this country is made up of the different inner places we go to whenever one of our many psychological defects takes control, pulling us out of the present moment. It's also the place we enter when our physical body falls asleep and we begin to dream. And ultimately, it's where we go when the physical body dies. This topic is especially important because by studying and understanding it, we begin to see why it's so vital to free ourselves from the illusion that we are already good people. We'll learn about the value of living in the present moment, this very instant, the here and now, and we'll explore how to truly do that. We'll also begin to understand how to shift our center of gravity, which right now is focused only on the things of the personality, and start moving it toward the things of consciousness. Only then can we begin the beautiful journey back to the source. So, let's begin by reflecting on the question, what is the psychological country? Undoubtedly, just as there is an external country where we live, there also exists, deep within us, what we call the psychological country. But most people are unaware of it. Each of us is a microcosm, a miniature universe, because within us lies a vast inner world, where, as we saw in lectures 5 and 6, all the dimensions exist. However, we do not truly know ourselves. We don't have control over our inner world. Instead, it is the ego that dominates, keeping our essence trapped. That's why we live and move within just a small portion of our psychology, which we call the psychological country. Just as the outer world is governed by laws and populated by people, our psychological country also contains its own places and inhabitants. But due to our lack of self-observation, we usually don't know where we are within it at any given moment. None of us is unaware of where we are physically. We always know our physical surroundings. However, most of the time we have no idea where we are located psychologically. This happens because throughout our lives, we've focused almost entirely on developing and sharpening our 5 physical senses. These senses help us navigate the external world, letting us know where we are and alerting us to any potential danger or change in our environment. But we've rarely, if ever, taken the time to develop our internal sense, the one often called the third eye, which is the capacity for self-observation. Because of this, we usually remain unaware of when we've slipped into the darker, more dangerous corners of our own psychology. So while we may clearly know where we are physically at any moment, we remain completely unaware of the psychological place we've entered within ourselves. Just as there are beautiful and pleasant places in the external country we live in, the same is true within our psychological country. There are inner places filled with beauty, like the ones we visit psychologically when we are in love. In those moments, we experience delightful emotions and imagine beautiful scenes. All of those experiences unfold within our psychological country. But just as we can feel and imagine wonderful things during pleasant moments, in difficult times, when we feel fear, anxiety, worry, or anger, we shift into very different inner places, darker places, sometimes even disturbing or wicked. Because just like the external world has areas where terrible and perverse things happen, our psychological country also contains such places within us. It's important to understand that the inner world doesn't follow the same laws as the physical world. The physical world is governed by 48 laws, limitations that we are all subject to. Among these are the laws of time and space, which determine that to move from one place to another, we must travel a distance, and that takes time. But in the inner world, the world of thoughts and emotions, those limitations don't exist. In our psychology, we can move from one state to another at the speed of thought. For example, we might be feeling sad and find ourselves in a gray, rainy corner of our psychological country, surrounded by gloomy characters. Then, in an instant, we become angry, and suddenly we've entered a violent, chaotic inner landscape, filled with irritable and aggressive figures. All this happens as fast as our thoughts can change. Everything depends on the kind of companions we have within us. Just as in the external world, we find all kinds of people: cultured and honorable individuals, good-hearted people, as well as dishonest, cruel, and corrupt ones. Within ourselves, there is also a great variety of people who live and act through us. These inner companions are the many different parts of ourselves, the many I's or psychological defects that make up our ego. They take turns expressing through us, making us think, feel, and act differently, depending on the circumstances or our current emotional state. They each guide us to a different place within that inner landscape based on their specific nature. We've all experienced this. At one moment, we're friendly and kind because we're being influenced by gentle, polite I's. But if something suddenly upsets us, we can become rude or harsh, driven by completely different I's. If lust takes over, we act lustfully. If greed arises, we may act dishonestly. And just like that, we move from one psychological state to another, from one place in our psychological country to the next, depending on which defect is active in us. There's an old saying, "Tell me who you're with, and I'll tell you who you are." That's because our companions tend to determine the places we visit. Just as in the physical world, if all our friends are heavy drinkers, we're likely to spend our time in bars. If we surround ourselves with drug addicts, we'll find ourselves in places where drugs are present. If we hang out with people who frequent brothels, we'll end up in brothels. But if our friends are business people, we'll go to meetings and professional gatherings. And if we're close to musicians, we'll find ourselves in concerts and rehearsal spaces. In the same way, within us, the companions we carry, our different psychological I's, guide us to specific places in our psychological country. And this is what truly defines us. These inner companions and the psychological places we move through day by day reveal who we really are, often in spite of how we appear on the outside. Because while we may present a certain image externally, our internal reality can be something completely different. On the outside, we might appear to be in a specific place, playing a certain role or projecting a particular image, but internally, in our psychological country, we may be in completely different places, thinking, feeling, and desiring things that contradict what we show externally. Let's look at a few examples to illustrate this. We might see a virtuous woman, an admirable wife, who behaves in an exemplary, faithful, and respectable way. She lives in a beautiful home and carries herself with dignity. But within her psychological country, she might be wandering through a house of prostitution because of the lustful I's that dominate her inner world. All day long, she may be carried away by these I's. When she sees the gardener, the neighbor, or a handsome actor on the screen, she imagines sensual scenes and feels desire. Or she might spend hours criticizing a young neighbor who often receives male visitors. Yet while doing so, she creates all kinds of lustful and degrading scenarios in her imagination. She doesn't realize that all of this is happening in her own psychological country. Those scenes exist in her imagination because the defects she projects onto her neighbor live inside her. And still, she feels honorable and pure. Or take the case of a man who is known as honest and upstanding, a model citizen. He might be sitting at a business meeting, perfectly dressed, projecting integrity. Yet in his psychological country, he might be in a den of thieves, led there by his own hidden tendencies toward dishonesty. Inside, he may be scheming, planning how to gain the upper hand in a deal, how to sabotage a competitor to rise in position, or how to manipulate the market to secure a monopoly. He may even be secretly calculating how to embezzle money to fund a personal luxury or need. Reflecting on this, we begin to see that the outer image doesn't always match the inner reality. As the old saying goes, faces we see, hearts we don't know. We might even find a monk, cloistered in a monastery, appearing serene and holy, while in his psychological country, he is surrounded by murderers, thieves, drug traffickers, and gunmen. This may sound unbelievable, but crime can also be hidden in the fragrance of incense. Beneath the sacred domes of the holiest sanctuaries, crime often disguises itself in robes of purity and speaks with the voice of the sublime. What we show on the outside is just a facade. What truly defines us is what we carry within, our inner psychology. And if we sincerely want to awaken our consciousness, the first step is to recognize who lives in our psychological country and what dark, hidden places those inner inhabitants keep us trapped in. Sometimes we hear shocking news about someone who seemed to be a very good person. Suddenly it's discovered that they committed a crime, raped their own child, or were secretly cheating for years. What's going on in such cases? The truth is, we don't really know ourselves. And even worse, we don't want to face our own inner perversity. We cling to the idea that we're good people, even if that means living in self-deception. But when life confronts us with a difficult situation, we react poorly and make mistakes. And what do we usually do afterward? We blame the circumstances, we blame others, but we fail to see what was already moving inside of us. We don't observe the psychological defects, those inner eyes that were pushing us, directing us, and that, if left unobserved and uneliminated through psychological death, will eventually drive us to actions we will bitterly regret. Even worse, those inner defects will prevent us from ever awakening our consciousness because they are the very forces keeping our consciousness imprisoned. We must understand, simply believing that we're good people will never make us conscious. Trying to act like good people won't make us conscious either. All that does is strengthen the false self-image we've built, an image that convinces us we're fine, that we don't need to change. That image tells us we're model citizens, exemplary individuals. After all, we don't kill, we don't steal, we don't do drugs, we don't harm anyone. So we think that self-knowledge and the elimination of defects is something other people need, not us. But we fail to see that the entire world around us is just a mirror, reflecting back the very darkness we carry inside. The same defect we criticize in others exists within us, and we judge it outside because we haven't understood it within. Real transformation begins only when we're brave enough to admit that we are not as good as we think we are, when we're willing to truly observe ourselves and confront our own inner darkness. We must face the psychological eyes that constantly express through our mind, our imagination, our emotions, our instincts, and our sexuality. And we must stop looking for external culprits for our reactions, for our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Only then can we begin a genuine inner revolution, a radical change that brings light to the darkness hidden within our psychological country. That's why it is said there is much virtue in the wicked, and much wickedness in the virtuous. Because someone who is considered bad but recognizes their own wickedness is at least being honest. And that honesty gives them a better chance to change, because they know they've hit rock bottom. They admit they are lost. But someone who believes themselves to be good while hiding mountains of darkness within will never change because they're convinced they don't need to. And so they will continue to wander through the psychological country blindly led by their defects into places that are increasingly perverse, wicked, and dark. So how do we stop wandering blindly through our psychological country, going wherever our defects want to take us? By learning to live in the present moment, right here and now, by practicing psychological death continually. We must train ourselves to recognize each time an I is pulling us out of the present, dragging us into another psychological place and another psychological time. The only moment where our consciousness can truly manifest is this one, the here and now. Our physical location and our psychological state must be aligned, both here, both now, with full awareness of ourselves. We have to make it our goal to stay in the present moment, no matter what. So each time an I in the mind leads you to start dreaming about the past or worrying about the future, become aware. It's taking you away from the now. Each time you begin to fantasize, whether it's about pleasure, power, revenge, or escape, you must recognize that a psychological defect is pulling you out of the present and into another place in your psychological country. And you must return. And whenever you become identified with an I, and you're about to react, or already have, realize that your consciousness has been taken, and you've been dragged into a psychological den. Through constant self-observation, from moment to moment, you can begin to discover these inner places, these psychological caves, where your eyes try to take you. Be alert. Ask yourself, where has this anger, resentment, or intolerance taken me psychologically? What den of lust is this lascivious or adulterous thought trying to lead me into? What inner dungeon have I entered where I'm mentally attacking the person I'm judging or criticizing? And every time you discover an I, look at it carefully and judge it. not with hatred but with clarity, until you truly see it for what it is, a psychological defect. Then appeal to that divine force within you, the force of your consciousness that has the power to transform you, your inner Divine Mother, and mentally ask her with sincerity, Divine Mother, eliminate this defect from me. Ask for the elimination of every I you discover in the moment it arises, and soon you will begin to witness a real transformation in your inner world within your psychological country. This inner change will also reflect in the astral world, that realm of dreams we enter every night when we sleep. If before we experienced only darkness and unconsciousness, if we used to go out in dreams without any awareness, living all kinds of strange or troubling experiences, now we will begin to notice a shift. If you are constantly working to stay awake during the day, eliminating the eyes that try to distract you from the here and now, you will start to awaken in the astral plane as well. You'll begin to realize when you are no longer in the physical world, but in the world of dreams. For example, you may find yourself in a place that's supposed to be your home, but it's not. And you'll be able to say, wait, this isn't my house, I'm dreaming. And in that moment, you'll become conscious in the astral world. That's why it is urgent to begin this inner work through practice, through experience, so that little by little we start to awaken. Throughout history, many theories have been proposed about where we go when we die. But the truth is, the answer is much closer and clearer than we think. When we die, we go to our psychological country. Just as every night when we fall asleep, our soul leaves the physical body so it can be recharged by the vital body. And during that time, our soul enters the inner world to have experiences in our psychological country. But we usually go there completely unconscious, asleep, carried from one place to another by our many psychological defects, by our eyes. And even when the experience is absurd or chaotic, we still don't realize that we are dreaming. We don't become aware that we're in the astral plane. In the same way, when the physical body dies, our soul will also cross over into that other dimension. The difference is that the silver cord, the subtle link that connects the physical body to the soul and allows us to return to the body each morning, will be severed by the angel of death. And from that point on, we will remain in that inner world, still unconscious, repeating the same patterns, driven by the projections of our mind and our emotions, without any awareness or control. We will be carried from one state to another, moved only by mechanical laws and the inertia of our own psychological conditioning. After death, each person continues to exist in the same psychological place they always lived in. The thief remains in the den of thieves. The lustful one continues in the brothel, and the angry, furious person, like a ghost of bad omen, keeps wandering the dark alleys of vice and rage. They stay trapped in the same psychological country they carried within during life. And they will remain there until the law of return, a mechanical cosmic law, calls them back into a new physical body, if they still have remaining human existences. If not, if they have already exhausted their opportunities as a human being, then they will return into another kingdom of nature, according to that same law. We must always remember that the essence, the true being within us, is something profoundly beautiful. It came from above, from the stars, but sadly it is now trapped within all the egos, all the eyes we carry inside. That essence has the potential to retrace its steps, to return to its origin, to rise once more to the stars. But for that to happen, we must first liberate it from the bad companions that hold it prisoner in the dark suburbs of perdition. We have to rescue every fragment of our consciousness that is trapped within each of our psychological defects. If we manage to awaken our consciousness, if we eliminate all those eyes that keep us asleep, dreaming through life, then when the moment of physical death comes, we will pass into the other dimension with full awareness. And in that state of awakened consciousness, we'll be able to choose where to go, what to do, and which steps to take in order to keep advancing on the spiritual path. If we can be conscious during the day, we will become conscious in the astral plane, and we will remain conscious after death. But let's be clear, the goal is not to die physically. The real goal is to free ourselves from death itself, through psychological death, and attain eternal life by fully developing our essence, because our essence is immortal. To achieve this transformation, it is urgent that we shift our magnetic center, the center of gravity of our life, from the false personality to the essence. Because as long as our magnetic center remains fixed in the illusion of personality, we will continue to dwell in the most abominable psychological dens, even if in our daily lives we appear to be respectable, upstanding citizens. We need to become aware of what holds our magnetic center right now. Where is our attention, our energy, our sense of identity rooted? For example, a salesperson may have their center of gravity revolving around sales, clients, profits, and losses. A musician may have it in concerts, rehearsals, and the attention of fans. A housewife may center her energy on home tasks, caring for her children and her husband. A lawyer may be focused on trials, clients, and winning cases. So ask yourself, where is your current center of gravity? What do you spend most of your time, your thoughts, and your energy on? Take a moment to reflect deeply. If we truly want to awaken and develop our consciousness, we must begin the process of transferring that center of gravity, step by step, from the personality to the essence. That means gradually pulling time and energy away from the things that only feed the personality, and instead dedicating it to practices that nourish the essence and bring us closer to awakening. When the magnetic center becomes firmly rooted in the consciousness, in the essence, then the return of the complete human being to the stars can truly begin. That is the path back to our origin. And with that, we conclude today's lecture. If you have any questions or reflections, feel free to share them. We'll be happy to answer and support you on your journey. I invite you to our next conference, where we'll explore how to develop the power of concentration and how to remain permanently relaxed. It's a very important topic. Don't miss it.